Picture this: a storm so powerful it kills 500,000 people in a single night, reshaping the course of nations and rewriting recorded history. You're about to discover the 10 deadliest hurricanes and cyclones ever recorded, and some of these stories are ones the world almost forgot. Number 10, 1999 Odisha Super Cyclone. The 1999 Odisha cyclone, designated as a supercyclone, was the most intense tropical cyclone ever recorded in the North Indian Ocean. This storm organized in the Andaman Sea but rapidly intensified with 160-mile-per-hour sustained winds. Here's the really terrifying part. The storm surge reached between 16 and 20 feet, and in some areas it pushed water as much as 22 miles inland. That surge combined with heavy rainfall breached over 20,000 flood embankments across the region. The Odisha state took the brunt of the impact. Approximately 9,899 deaths were reported, with 1.6 million homes damaged or destroyed. Entire communities were wiped out by the combination of wind, water, and debris. The flooding devastated agricultural regions, destroying rice, sugarcane, and winter harvests across vast areas. This remains one of the worst natural disasters ever recorded in India. Number 9, 1998, Hurricane Mitch. Hurricane Mitch became a Category 5 hurricane and the second deadliest Atlantic hurricane in recorded history. But what made Mitch so deadly wasn't just its wind speed, it was its behavior. This monster of a storm moved slowly, incredibly slowly. From October 29th to November 3rd, Mitch just barely crawled across Honduras, Guatemala, and Nicaragua. Because it moved so slowly, it dumped absolutely staggering amounts of rain. We're talking up to 75 inches of rainfall in some areas. To comprehend that number, that's more than 6 feet of rain falling from the sky in just a few days. The catastrophic flooding that followed claimed around 11,000 lives. In Honduras alone, approximately 7,000 people died. In Nicaragua, the death toll reached 3,800. What made Nicaragua's situation even worse was that mountains in the region were literally saturated. This triggered massive mudslides. At the Casita volcano, a mudslide buried at least 4 entire villages under several feet of mud and debris. In El Porvenir and Rolando Rodriguez, more than 2,000 people were killed overnight by a single mudslide. Between 500,000 and 800,000 people lost their homes. Total damage exceeded $5 billion. And by 2008, when accounting for indirect deaths, the official death toll had been revised to approximately 19,325. Mitch remains a sobering reminder of how a slow-moving hurricane can be more dangerous than a fast-moving one. Number 8, 1900 Great Galveston Hurricane. A Category 4 hurricane made landfall with winds estimated between 130 and 140 miles per hour. What followed was the deadliest weather disaster in United States history. The official death toll? 8,000 people, but estimates ranged as high as 12,000. The destruction was almost incomprehensible for the time period. A storm surge of 8 to 15 feet inundated the entire island of Galveston. Remember, the highest elevation on Galveston Island was only 8.7 feet, which means the surge literally submerged most of the city. Over 7,000 buildings were destroyed. More than 3,600 homes were demolished completely, and every single structure in the city suffered some degree of damage. Approximately 10,000 people were left homeless. Property damage was estimated at $28 to $30 million, an absolutely staggering sum in 1900. The city's golden era ended that day. Investors looked at the devastation and decided Houston was the safer bet. In response to this catastrophe, engineers designed and built a 10-mile seawall and raised the entire Gulf Coast elevation of Galveston Island by 17 feet. That seawall still stands today as a testament to one of America's greatest natural disasters. Number 7, 1864 Calcutta Cyclone. A devastating tropical cyclone struck most of the areas of Calcutta, India. The storm surge reached 15 feet and swept up the Hooghly River, causing severe flooding and structural damage. Water rushed inland, washing away everything in its course. When the cyclone finally passed, over 60,000 people were dead, the majority from drowning, with others succumbing to diseases that followed. In Calcutta alone, 40,698 native huts were completely leveled by the storm. An additional 102 well-built houses were destroyed with 563 severely damaged. The poor bore the brunt of the casualties, living in structures that couldn't withstand the water's force. Ships were destroyed in the harbors, and trade was devastated for years. The city and surrounding areas had to be completely rebuilt after the cyclone. The total damages from the storm were calculated at a massive sum for the era. This cyclone would be a wake-up call to the region about the power of storm surge and would influence building practices for generations to come. Number 6. 2008 Cyclone Nargis. Cyclone Nargis made landfall in Myanmar, also known as Burma, and what happened next was one of the worst humanitarian disasters ever recorded. According to official figures, 84,500 people were killed and 53,800 went missing. But here's where it gets even more tragic. Non-governmental organizations estimated that the final death toll could have exceeded 138,000. The exact numbers will never be known because countless bodies were never recovered. They decayed, were buried, or were washed out to sea. Nargis was a Category 4 equivalent storm, but the real killer was the storm surge. This surge wasn't just a wall of water on the coast. It penetrated 40 kilometers inland through the densely populated Irrawaddy Delta. That's 25 miles of pure water destruction moving inland. The Labuda Township alone saw approximately 80,000 deaths, with another 10,000 in nearby Bogle. When you have that kind of death toll concentrated in relatively small areas, it tells you something about the sheer power of this storm. Over 75% of buildings collapsed throughout the affected region. Another 20% had their roofs ripped completely off. Between 2 and 3 million people were left homeless. The UN estimated that 2.4 million people were affected by Nargis. This was comparable to the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami in terms of total destruction. Myanmar's infrastructure was crippled for months. Number 5. 1876 Great Backerganj Cyclone. The Great Backerganj Cyclone, also known as the Bengal Cyclone of 1876, struck the coast of what is now Bangladesh with extreme force. The cyclone made landfall on October 31st at Backerganj. The maximum wind speed was estimated at 140 miles per hour, with a storm surge reaching between 10 and 45 feet. 3 massive storm waves swept over an area of 3,000 square miles, containing a population of 1 million souls. The devastation was nearly immediate and absolutely complete. Approximately 200,000 people were killed, half by direct drowning from the storm surge, and the rest from subsequent famine and disease. Contemporary reports described villages where 70% of the population perished. Officials who might have provided accurate casualty counts themselves died in the flood, making the exact death toll impossible to verify. In Chittagong alone, over 3,000 people died during the storm itself, with another 4,399 dying of cholera in the months that followed. The cyclone demonstrated that high tides combined with extreme storm surge created the most dangerous combination for coastal populations. Number 4. 1881 Haiphong Typhoon. The Haiphong Typhoon struck the city of Haiphong in northern Vietnam with catastrophic force. Haiphong, located about 10 miles from the coast on the Red River Delta in a low-elevation area, was founded just 7 years before this typhoon struck. The city's geography worked against it, low-lying, vulnerable to storm surge, with limited escape routes. When the typhoon made landfall, the destruction was almost total. High waves and winds devastated everything. Rice fields were flooded, buildings were decimated, trees were ripped up by their roots. People either drowned or were left stranded without shelter or supplies. The city, which had been developing as a port town, was essentially wiped off the map. By the time the typhoon passed, most of the town was destroyed. Then came the aftermath. Economically crippled and unable to operate as a port, Haiphong's recovery took decades. The final death toll reached approximately 300,000 people, making Haiphong one of the deadliest single typhoon strikes in recorded history. The disaster would reshape Vietnam's approach to coastal settlement and disaster preparedness. Number 3. 1839 Coringa Cyclone. The bustling harbor city of Coringa in present-day Andhra Pradesh on the southeastern coast of India faced annihilation. A massive cyclone struck with such force that the entire harbor was destroyed. The storm generated a 40-foot storm surge, that's higher than a 4-story building, which completely destroyed the port city. Ships were smashed like toys and rivers overflowed, swallowing croplands and livestock. The storm surge drowned over 300,000 people. Approximately 20,000 water-going vessels were destroyed, ranging from ocean-worthy ships to canoes. The destruction was so complete that the port city was never rebuilt. Some individuals who survived the disaster moved far inland from the coast to avoid future threats. The British and Indian authorities never re-established Coringa as a major port. Today, it remains a haunting reminder of nature's raw power and the vulnerability of human infrastructure even centuries later. Number 2. 1737 Hooghly River Cyclone. The Hooghly River Cyclone, also called the Calcutta Cyclone of 1737, struck the coast near Kolkata on the morning of October 11th. This was the first supercyclone ever recorded in the North Indian Ocean. Based on inland observations, the cyclone's tidal effects were felt as far as 130 kilometers inland south-southwest of Calcutta. The storm surge created by the cyclone swept up the Hooghly River, causing severe flooding and structural damage. Contemporary accounts describe entire villages of thatched huts flattened or washed away, leaving few survivors. At least 8 of 9 moored company vessels were lost as a direct result of the storm. The reported death toll varies depending on the source, but most modern estimates place the death toll between 300,000 and 350,000 people. The vast majority of deaths resulted from the storm surge, with many bodies never recovered. They decayed, were buried, or were washed out to sea into the Bay of Bengal. An unknown number of livestock and wild animals were killed. This storm marked the first time meteorologists recognized what we now call a supercyclone, the most extreme category of tropical storm. Centuries would pass before the world would see another storm of this magnitude. Number 1. Great Bhola Cyclone, year 1970. East Pakistan, now present-day Bangladesh, experienced what would become the deadliest tropical cyclone ever recorded in human history. The Bhola Cyclone formed over the central Bay of Bengal on November 8th and traveled northward, intensifying as it moved. It reached its peak intensity with sustained winds of 115 miles per hour, equivalent to a Category 4 hurricane, on the afternoon of November 10th. On the evening of November 12th, the Bhola Cyclone made landfall on the coast of East Pakistan with devastating force. That evening, the cyclone swept a storm surge of 35 feet ahead of it as it made landfall. This washed over many flat, outlying islands, including Bhola, the largest island in the region. Whole fishing communities were obliterated in minutes. At least 300,000 people died in the storm, though estimates suggest the death toll may have been as high as 500,000. The exact number remains unknowable because census records were non-existent, and countless bodies were never found or identified. The vast majority of deaths resulted from the storm surge that flooded much of the low-lying islands of the Ganges Delta. In the most severely affected upazila of Tazumuddin, over 45% of the population, approximately 80,000 of 167,000 people, were killed by the storm. Think about that for a moment. Nearly half of an entire district's population gone in a single night. The Pakistani government was severely criticized for its delayed handling of relief operations following the storm. The poor and discriminatory response from the West Pakistan government led to widespread disillusionment among the East Pakistani people. The opposition Awami League gained a landslide victory in the province during elections held just a month later. The unrest and tension between East Pakistan and the central government eventually triggered the Bangladesh Liberation War 7 months later, which concluded with the creation of the independent state of Bangladesh. In many ways, this cyclone didn't just kill hundreds of thousands, it changed the political and geographic map of South Asia forever. The deadliest hurricanes and cyclones in recorded history remind us that nature's power transcends time and borders. From the 1737 Hooghly to the 1970 Bhola, these storms shaped civilizations and changed the world forever.